okay. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. We'll start all over again. Welcome to our March zoning hearing today. It's awful day out there today, but we're glad y'all could come. And let me ask if Pastor Justin Woke is here from the North Metro. He was to give our invocation. Not seen. I hope not. Then, for all those that are able, Andy Smith is going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And before we get started with the zoning hearing, I have a brief announcement that I'd like to, we're going to miss him, but this is Andy's last meeting with us. He has, today's officially, he has resigned. And I'm going to let Andy tell you what he's going to be doing.
Well, thank you, Judy. I thoroughly enjoyed working with this group at the Planning Commission, but let me especially thank the staff who's been so wonderful and pretty unsung in the broad scope of things. The amount of work that needs to be done to keep me straight alone is worth rewarding. So hopefully they'll continue. I know they'll continue with that great work. And I'm going to be running for Cobb County Commissioner in District 2 is the reason why I had to resign. So
Well,
thank you.
on behalf of me, I've enjoyed working with you, and we're going to miss you, and the best of luck in your future endeavors. So.
Thank you. I wish I had a case today.
Well, you feel free to share any of our cases. We have no problem with it. If you want to take my whole book, that's fine too. John, with that, I'm going to turn it over to you and get us started in the zoning hearing.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Today's hearing will be conducted with the following process and procedure. Each case will be called in numerical order. We ask that the applicant stand and raise their hand to show that they are in attendance. Then we're going to call to see if there's anyone opposed to a case. So when we call that case, please stand and raise your hand if you're in opposition to a case. Then after that, each side will be asked to come forward to be sworn in at the front. The applicant will testify first, and then the opposition, if any, will testify second. It's important to note that each side only gets 10 minutes to state their case and concerns. There's not a process to reserve your time, and there's not a rebuttal process. So convey all your information to the board within your 10-minute time period. Additionally, if more than one person wishes to speak on a case, you may want to coordinate with each other about what you're going to talk about, because each side only gets 10 minutes, and you don't want to cover the same information twice. Then after the presentation periods, the board will start to discuss the case at hand. From that discussion, you may ask one or more people to come back to the front for questions or comments. And after that, the board will make a decision to either approve, deny, hold, or continue the matter at hand. There is one case on today's printed agenda which has been withdrawn without prejudice and will not be heard today. That's rezoning case Z11 of 2020, Cameron General Contractors Incorporated. This case has been withdrawn without prejudice and will not be heard today. Madam Chair and Board, we did get a request last week, one day after the cutoff period, to withdraw SLUP 3, Christian Crawford, and this staff would ask the board withdraw that without prejudice.
Okay, and that's in my district, and there's, John, we've talked about it, and it's been a little miscommunication. I think probably this is a lot of my fault. I thought it was in for just a stump grinding, but apparently he has to have a land use. He'll be refiling, in other words, for the debris that comes there after they do their landscaping. So,
correct.
So I'd like to make a motion that we accept that withdrawal without prejudice. Got a second? Call the question. That's approved 5-0, and that's without prejudice, so that he can reapply.
Okay, and there's one additional case. The board did approve a revised backyard chicken code last month. So I think we can withdraw LUP 4 of 2020, Carissa McConkey. Is the applicant here? I did talk to her last week, Madam Chair and Board, and she did submit the required forms, and she will comply with the new code. So the staff would ask that you withdraw this without prejudice.
Okay, this would be Fred's district, so I'll let Fred make the motion.
Madam Chairman, respectfully move to allow the withdrawal of LUP 4 of 2020.
Do we have a second?
Second?
Second, Andy. Call the question. And that's withdrawn, 4-0, 5-0, excuse me.
Thank
Andy,
you.
I've already got you gone. John, what's next?
Yes, ma'am. There are a number of cases on today's agenda which have been either continued or held and will not be heard today. First case is rezoning case Z62 of 2019, Embry Development Company LLC. This case was continued by the staff until the April 7th, 2020 Planning Commission zoning hearing. So rezoning case Z62 of 2019 will not be heard today. Rezoning case Z76 of 2019, St. Benedict's Episcopal Day School Incorporated. This case was continued by the staff until the April 7th, 2020 Planning Commission zoning hearing. So Z76 of 2019 will not be heard today. SLEP 17 of 2019, St. Benedict's Episcopal Day School Incorporated. This case has been continued by the staff until the April 7th, 2020 Planning Commission zoning hearing. So SLEP 17 of 2019 will not be heard today. And lastly, Z13 of 2020, Arturo Martinez. This case was continued by the staff until the April 7th, 2020 Planning Commission zoning hearing. So Z13 of 2020 will not be heard today. With that, Madam Chair, I'm ready to start the consent agenda.
Okay, go ahead with the consent agenda, and then after the consent agenda, how about
Thank you.
talk about?
Cobb County Planning Commission zoning hearing consent agenda for March 3rd, 2020. Rezoning case Z1, Knoll Construction LLC, request rezoning from R20 to NRC for the purpose of an office retail building in land lot 789 of the 19th District. The property is located at the northwest corner of Ernest Barrett Parkway and Powder Springs Road. Staff recommends approval, subject to the following conditions. Site plan received by the zoning division on September 26, 2019, with the district commissioner approving minor modifications. Fire department comments, site plan review comments, water and sewer comments, stormwater management comments, Cobb County Department of Transportation comments and recommendations, and the district commissioner to approve the final building architecture. Is the applicant present? Okay. Is there anyone here opposed to rezoning case Z1? Let the record show there's 2 people opposed. And the applicant is here, so we'll pull this one off consent, just put Z1 on regular agenda.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Okay, rezoning case Z21, Job D. Bello Sebastian request a rezoning from GC to NRC for the purpose of a professional office in land lot 706 of the 19th District. The property is located at the west side of Austell Road, south of Pear Road. Staff recommends approval, subject to the following conditions. Site plan received by the zoning division on December 12th, 2019, with the district commissioner approving minor modifications. Stormwater Management Division comments and recommendations, Water and Sewer Division comments and recommendations, Department of Transportation comments and recommendations, and professional office use only. Is the applicant present? Let the record show the applicant is here. Is there anyone here opposed to rezoning case Z21? Let the record show there's no one opposed. And finally, rezoning case Z22, Marcus Vinicius Oliveira request request a rezoning from NS and R30 to R30 for the purpose of single-family dwelling units detached in land lot 160 of the 20th District, located on the west side of Backward D. West Road, north of Mars Hill Church Road, Jim Owens Road. Staff recommends approval, subject to the following conditions. Site plan received by the zoning division on December 31st, 2019, with the district commissioner approving minor modifications. Fire department comments and recommendations, stormwater management division comments and recommendations, water and sewer division comments and recommendations, and Department of Transportation comments and recommendations. Is the applicant present? Let the record show the applicant is here. Is there anyone here opposed to rezoning case Z22? Let the record show there's no one opposed. And I apologize to the applicant for Z22. I botched your last name. I'll get it right for the next hearing. And that concludes the consent agenda, Madam Chair and Board.
All right, thank you. It's back to this board. With the exception of Z1, do I have any a motion on the consent agenda?
I was gonna say I have some additions.
Okay,
Do you
go
wanna
ahead and
make
make
the
your
motion?
motion in a
Okay.
second, and then you could.
Okay.
You have a motion, and then second.
Let Andy make the motion.
Andy, make this. Andy, make the motion.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to move that we accept the consent agenda as presented with the removal of Z1.
And then second for discussion.
No, Madam Chairman, I was going to actually ask that we split the consent agenda for a reason that I have a conflict of interest in acting as a planning commissioner with respect to KC 22 due to the fact that I own property next door to these people. So I was gonna, and I need to abstain from that matter, and if there's any discussion, I need to absent myself from the discussion.
I don't think we're going to have any discussion because there wasn't any opposition, so I think you're fine just to sit there, but not vote on it. So Alice, you want to second it for discussion? Okay, now,
Okay. And then I have on Z21, I realized once I got the large site plan after our work session, that when I reviewed the parking, while they have 12 parking spaces shown on the plan, maybe one of them actually meets county standards. So they're gonna need to submit a new parking plan and restripe so that they actually have legal parking spots. Most of them are way shorter and the aisleway's not wide enough. They may need to do a one-way in, one-way out or something, but right now, that, other than that, nothing else that we didn't already discuss. So I'm gonna add to it that the site plan received December 12th, 2019 with the following modifications. Parking to be reconfigured to meet county ordinance, and additional paving may be added up to 2,000 square feet. They may need a tiny bit to do that. Professional office use only. Parking plan that meets county ordinance to be provided to the zoning division manager within 30 days of final Board of Commissioners' final zoning decision. Parking to the approved parking plan to be provided within 90 days of the Board of Commissioners' final zoning decision. Parking stop blocks to be provided to prevent parking on non-hardened surfaces. No outdoor storage. No parking on non-hardened surfaces. All trash to be kept in proper garbage receptacles. If a dumpster is used, a dumpster enclosure to Cobb County Development Standards to be provided, District Commissioner to approve location of dumpster. And then a note, given the small size and office use only, roll-out garbage receptacles may be used. So they don't have to do a dumpster, just if they do, they need to make it there. And yes, there is more. District Commissioner may approve minor modifications except for those that increase overall building square footage. There are no buffers. That's not going to happen. That can't happen. Or a change that is in conflict with an express stipulation or condition of zoning or requires a variance or violates Cobb County ordinance.
all right, we have a motion and we have a second with modifications. So,
We need to make sure you're okay since you made the motion with the changes.
I am.
And then
fine
the
with
second,
those changes.
and the second's okay?
We've got to vote on.
yeah, we're gonna have, because you're split, we're gonna have to
Vote
do
to
it
split?
separately. Yeah, so we're gonna be voting, this one will be
So let me revise that
21.
motion to be just the 21.
21, okay. So we're voting on 21 because of the split, okay. So call the question. And that's, the consent agenda for the item Z21 is approved, 5-0. Now we're gonna act on Z22. Call the question. But we have to have make a motion.
I'm going to make a motion that we accept case C22 on the consent agenda.
Okay, we have a second? Second. Call the question. And that is approved for, Fred is abstaining. And Z1 would be heard in its regular order, so. All right, John.
Okay. The two cases that are on consent agenda, Z21 and Z22, you're free to go. Just come back in 2 weeks for the Board of Commissioners hearing. And moving on to the continued and held case agenda. SLEP 4 of 2019, A1 Auto Cores LLC requests a special land use permit for the purpose of an auto salvage business in land lot 292 of the 17th District. The property is located on the north side of Pearl Street and on the west side of West Atlanta Street. The applicant's representative is present. Is there anyone here opposed to SLEP 4 of 2019? Let the record show there's no one opposed.
John, this one, we've been continuing, and I've talked to Kevin on this one, and Kevin will continue working on this, but I'd like to make a motion that we deny slot
Does
4.
Kevin want to make a presentation first?
No, he
No?
doesn't,
Okay,
no.
okay.
So I need a second by Alice, call the question. And that's denied 5-0, and you will continue working with District Commission. Thank you. Thank you, Sean.
Okay. Rezoning case Z3 of 2020, David Mena requests a rezoning from R20 to R15 for the purpose of a residential subdivision in land lot 12 of the 20th district. The property is located at the southwest corner of Baker Road and Woodstock Road. Is the applicant present? Is the applicant here? David Mena for Z3. Is there anyone here opposed to rezoning case Z3?
Z1.
No, we do the continued to hold cases first. Z1 gets moved to the regular agenda.
Regular agenda.
So we'll hold off on Z3. We'll call the applicant, see if they can come in before the end of the
They're
hearing.
not here yet?
So my assistant will call the
Okay.
applicant up. Okay? Rezoning case Z7 of 2020, Seven Springs Development Company Incorporated requests a rezoning from R30 to RSL for the purpose of a senior living subdivision in land lot 586 of the 19th district. The property is located on the north side of Moon Road, west of Florence Road. The applicant's representative is present. Is there anyone here opposed to rezoning case Z7? Let the record show there's 11 people here opposed. Is there anyone here in support of rezoning case Z7? Let the record show there's no one here in support. All those folks wishing to address the board, please come forward to be sworn in.
Would. You'll come on in.
No, it's not helpful. I'm gonna do it when it's helpful.
Oh. Whenever you're ready.
Great. Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Kevin Moore here on behalf of the applicant property owners in this application for rezoning. This property is 15.44 acres. It's located on Moon Road, and what we are proposing and requesting a rezoning of this property from its current R30 zoning category to the RSL, or Residential Senior Living category, which, as you know, but for purposes of explanation and clarity, the Residential Senior Living category is a residential category that restricts the owners of the properties to age 55 years of age and older. So it is an age-restricted development. In addition, that RSL category that we are seeking does require all the homes to meet certain standards for construction in terms of their interior design and exterior design, as far as meeting that age-restricted market. So it has certain elements to it, to the construction of the home, such as master living areas and bedrooms on a main floor, stepless types of entries, and so forth and so on. Those are generally referred to as easy living standards, and those are required by Cobb County Code and the RSL category to be included in these homes. So the homes are specifically designed, built, constructed to meet that age-restricted market that they're intended for. And that's what we are proposing in this community and for this property of 15.4 acres that you see on your screen now. This case was held from last month, and we did do some redesign and did a revised site plan, which reduced the overall number of requested homes from 62. It was reduced to 55, and that's what you're seeing before you now is that request. And so I'm going to go a little bit about the site plan itself and review that with you and certainly highlight some of the things that we think are important for your consideration. Turning to the site plan, again, here is Moon Road with the entrance located here off of Moon Road. We are showing this and proposing a gated entrance, though that is at the option of the developer, Seven Springs, but we are showing how that would be configured so that it would meet all Cobb County codes and ordinances for installation of gates. And the gates are part of a choice and a marketing choice for the developer of this age-restricted community. Oftentimes that market and the people that buy those homes and the market that they're seeking, the security aspect, safety and security aspect is highly important, as well as from a value standpoint, those gates can provide a real plus for their community overall. We do have a full amenity that is located here for the use of the residents. Also, while not shown on the site plan specifically, it's also important to note that the RSL ordinance does require a minimum 30-foot perimeter buffer, which, while not shown, is included as part of our plans, but just wanted to make sure that was noted. What is shown is the 40-foot setback, but within that would be the minimum 30-foot perimeter buffer, which would be a mixture of both existing trees that provide landscaping or visual screening, as well as fully planted buffer for purposes of visual screening. And I think that's an important point when you look at this surrounding perimeter buffer that would be a part of this plan, because any category for R20 or R30 or R15, any of the other residential categories do not require and have no requirement for a perimeter buffer. RSL does. And so with this proposal, the perimeter buffer would be in place for visual screening from the adjacent residences, which there are here in Gaydon Station, as well as in Autumn Run subdivisions. So that's something to be considered with an RSL that comes with that zoning category and is required. Also, when you're thinking about an RSL and an age-restricted development, also consider that in comparison to, for example, an R20 subdivision, in the same nature that Autumn Run is an R20 subdivision, you'd be right at around 27 lots, 27 homes for this property. If it was zoned similarly to Autumn Run, which is adjacent, and those that zoning would be done without the requirement of a perimeter buffer. You'd also have a lot more noise activity with a standard R20 subdivision, a single-family subdivision here, would be a lot more activity both in the rear yards and certainly a lot more activity as it relates to trip and vehicle trip generation from this development if developed as single-family. In addition, we do have proposed 2 detention areas, which have been preliminarily located according to the preliminary hydrology and project civil engineering. Those would be constructed and would meet all Cobb County standards and ordinances, and we have agreed in our stipulation letter to meet all Cobb County standards and ordinances, as well as your Cobb County Stormwater Management Division. Comments and recommendations are fully agreeable and will be implemented in this instance. In addition, these detention areas would be fully landscaped and fenced as well, also important from that standpoint. We have also included at our entrance the requirement for a left turn lane for entry for those traveling on Moon Road. Taking a left into this development, there will be a left turn lane installed. That's also part of our stipulations and zoning conditions, as well as consistent with DOT's recommendation. Also, we have included area here for a deceleration taper, which will be finalized with DOT as far as the exact length of that. As you can see, we get off of our property at this location here, and there's also a stream crossing. So there's some final engineering with DOT that would be left for the exact length of that taper, and DOT's comments and their updated comments reflect that, and we're in full agreement with that. Just wanted to make sure that we had identified that particular area in working with DOT from that standpoint. With respect to the overall application, it's also important to note we are not requesting any variances from the RSL category, which is important in this instance. In this location, we feel like this particular location in this area is and does provide an excellent location for a residential senior living and age-restricted community. In particular, Seven Springs Development, they have done in several residential developments in Cobb County, Powder Springs, and other areas in metropolitan Atlanta, and they are well-versed in this type of community and the specifics and that it requires to build this type of community and make it successful, as they have done in other locations. Staff has recommended approval of RSL. They wanted it to be less number of homes, but in terms of the overall category, I think staff sees exactly what we see, and that is that it's an excellent location for an age-restricted community. Again, I do want to remind you that RSL by code and ordinance does not set a precedent from a land use plan or zoning standpoint by code and ordinance. Again, this is considered consistent residentially in a residential area, but on a road that is a major road, that is Moon Road. With that, we respectfully request your recommendation for approval to the Board of Commissioners and are here to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. We'll hear from the opposition at this time.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. My name is Ed Vance. I live at 5425 Moon Road. I'm across from the development and right next to Pond at 5425. And a couple things I wanted to bring up today in regards to the RSL. I know that Autumn Run was used as something comparable to putting this current plan into effect, that R20. Most of the neighbors that are here today to oppose and to voice opposition to this, we can't even see Autumn Run. It's not really, something that we even look at. If you look in front of the development, behind it and around to the left, those are the people that will be most impacted, and you can look at the size of those lots and see that it's not really R20. It's definitely more of an R30 feel to the area. And if you've been reading some of your emails, some of the opposition, a lot of the wording on it is we moved to the area because of that rural feel and the larger lots. And so it's kind of opposed to some of the reasons we moved into this particular area. In regards to the street itself, I believe it's classified as a minor collector. I'm trying to learn a lot of terminology over the last couple months. But just the idea of having a left turn lane on Moon Road, it just seems really silly to us as far as the road is really small. And trying to work a turn lane and borrow from land and stuff, it just doesn't seem really, I like the idea of having that, in order to help with traffic and stuff, but the road itself, I don't know if it'll support it, but I'm sure DOT experts have looked at it. Thank you. Another consideration, if you look at the large pond on the bottom, that's the one next to mine. I'm just really concerned during the construction phase, but also all the pavement that we're adding for the RSL and the drainage that's going to occur, that is going to affect that pond and the runoff that's available to that, even with the addition of a retention pond. And one of my neighbors is going to be mentioning her pond up in the upper left corner. Just a couple other little notes. This is at the county line, and it's one directional from public safety access if there are emergencies for these seniors, whether it be medical or fire. Police, Precinct 5 off of Dallas Highways has got a pretty good run. I know they do run zone patrols, but Fire Station 23 is going to be coming from just one direction to get to this location, not from the, I guess that's the western side, because that's going to be the county line there. Let's see. Other than that, it's just, once again, we're just looking at the character of the area, and putting all those homes in that area just doesn't really fit with where we want to be. And I believe one of my neighbors is also going to mention and talk about just the amount of senior living that we already have in the neighborhood. I believe, and they can speak more to it, that there's 10 or 12 already. So I think there's plenty of senior living within 6 to 7 miles that people can live in, and it's just not necessary for this area. Thank you for your time, and I'll yield to my neighbor.
Thank you, Ed. Next speaker.
Good morning. My name is Linda Anita Bashirs, and my property is the back pond. I'm not sure if it's the southeast or southwest corner. And I'm concerned about the runoff from, even with 2 retention ponds on 15 acres, there will still be runoff. There are wet weather springs in the woods. It's quite a drainage problem already, as my neighbor, one of my neighbors can tell you, because he gets all the water. But I'm concerned about my pond and a buffer between my pond and a retention pond. It's a recreational fishing pond with plants and animals and so forth, so I don't particularly want a retention pond sitting on top of it. I noticed they're doing the buffer where more of the houses are, but the houses that are not close together, I didn't see a 40-foot buffer or a 40-foot buffer between me and the subdivision or the senior living. That's my personal concern is my pond and my property, but the neighborhood concern is it does not fit in the character of our little neighborhood. We're pretty much a senior neighborhood now. Most of us have been there. I've been there 42 years. Out of the 74, I've been in Cobb County, and it is a senior area, and we want to stay in our homes. It's not, And Ed spoke of there are over 20 senior living developments within 5 to 6 miles of this location. And I didn't write the names down, but I've got the roads and where they are located. So there's not a big call. We're sandwiched in, our little street of Moon Road is sandwiched in between a huge one going in at Lost Mountain and Moon, and then at the other end of Moon is, it is in Paulding County, but it's senior living on Poplar Springs. So we're squished in between 2 big senior living developments already. And check my notes. I'm concerned about lighting. Street lighting will be on all the time. I have animals. I have a horse and chickens and cats and dogs, and it's going to buffer right up to my property. And I'm not used to street lights. I mean, it's usually dark back in the woods. So I would, if somebody can address that. The traffic is horrendous on Florence Road. I mean, you take your life in your hands, literally, every time you cross Moon Road across Florence or Hiram Road to Gaydon Road. It's a traffic nightmare, and I think one of my neighbors said there's a wreck at Moon and Florence at least once a month. People end up in her yard or her parents' yard. So it's, and plus the character, like I said, most of the properties have acreage, and this is being squished in, just sandwiched in, squished in into a developed, substantial little nice 2 and 3 acre lot houses, and there's 12 acres for sale with nothing around it a mile from there that would be perfect for senior living. So this is just not a real desirable area. Plus, our little Varner Elementary School is a low-performing school. They could definitely use the revenue from a nice 20-house subdivision, which they could build. I mean, it's very buildable. And less is best, so less housing, less footprint would be better for the community. But I had a couple of people call me that children go to Varna, and they said, we need the tax dollars. We need, it would be better not as senior living because they will get an exemption. And there will be as much traffic with seniors. They do drive. We all drive a lot, especially on the neighborhood roads. But I think the entry signage, we are concerned about that because our road are mailboxes and driveways. I mean, there's no subdivision. So will it be a big monument sign? What kind of sign would be for the entry? And it is high density. I think we're supposed to be low density. I think Mr. Moore said that it was in keeping, but 55 houses on 15 acres is not low density. And I guess that's all. The biggest concern is the drainage because I believe Dwayne, the developer, said that there would be 2 ponds, so they would be catching all the water. They would be helping us out. Well, that can't work because it's going to be all impervious surface and nothing will soak in, at least now. And my pond is showing partially in the wooded area because it's overflowing. For 2 years it's rained and the pond has been going uphill. That's how much water drains down that way. But, and I would like for y'all to think about the people that have lived there. Most of us have been there over 20 years, and we want new people in. A subdivision would be great, but consider us other than just another senior living development. And we need parkland out in our area. The pastures and the woods and all are disappearing into senior living. So just try to, think about future land use, that we would have some open space and green space left. And I appreciate your consideration.
All
Thank
right,
you.
thank you, Linda. Next speaker.
Hello, I'm Joni Hunter, and I live at Cross Creek subdivision, which is off of Hiram Road, right across from the people that it really impacts. Yeah, as they said, it's out of character with everything that's around it. The lease that you have is an R20. You are going to have a lot of runoff. I know that around the where the creek bed is, it's like when it rains, it floods drastically. I know that in the past, our front yard, we live up on a hill, and I know that even now, we still get, our front gets saturated, and the creek runs, I guess it's a creek that runs into the major creek. It just it fills up. Completely to the top when it rains. And even now, we still get a little bit of flooding. Also, as they said, we already have plenty of senior living facilities. And also, Moon Road is a cut through. Everybody uses it. They fly down through there. They use it as a cut through to get to Hiram and back and forth. And there is a real serious, you can't see the visibility when you're going across Florence Road there. It's kind of a blind right there where people try to cross over or either get out onto Florence Road. So it is really, really dangerous. There are a lot of wrecks there and at Hiram Road. Also, it's going to drastically change the environment. I only have 2 acres. I have probably one of the smallest lots in the area. And we have deer that bed down in the front of our yard because they're being pushed out. They have nowhere to go.
Johnny, you've run out of time, but go ahead and sum it up really quickly.
Okay, well, I'm just gonna say that, it is gonna affect the impact, air quality, noise, water runoff, wildlife. It just doesn't fit the neighborhood, and of course, we talked about school tax, how we do, Varner is our failing school. All 3 of my children went to school there. We lived there 32 years of our 50 years in Cobb County. And that's why we moved to the area, so we could have a little space. And also, it's come to my attention recently that the homeowners, they don't want to sell unless there is a senior living facility. And I feel like that's not a good steward of your neighbors and of your land, to think that you wouldn't consider alternatives to kind of be peaceful with your neighbors. And they still live in the neighborhood, and they're going to continue to live in the neighborhood. And I just think that you should not be so narrow-minded to think that that's the only thing that you'll do. is to build something like that and not consider some alternatives.
Okay, thank you, Johnny.
Thank you.
We've run out of time. The public hearing portion is closed. Kevin, they went over about 2 minutes. Do you want to add anything? Okay. So it's back to this board and be Galt.
Thank you, Judy. I guess we'll start with a few general, then we'll get to some of the specific things that people ask. You know, one of the things we hear all the time up here is preserving the woods and open space and that. But unfortunately, under Georgia Constitution, a property owner has the right to develop their property. So we can't sit there, the county can't tell them, you can't develop your property. I always like to start there, just so that people know, you know, that's the case. Now, there was some talk about the future land use, which is for low-density residential. And what that does is allow, you know, a traditional subdivision has to be within 2.5 units per acre. And with this being a little over 15 acres, that would be a maximum of 38 homes. That's a maximum. It doesn't mean that they'd actually get that, because the Board of Commissioners can take into consideration lots of factors in determining, you know, what the right category is. Now, it's currently zoned R30, which will allow for 16 or 17 homes. You know, it all depends on how it would lay out and that, but somewhere in that neighborhood, typically, just rule of thumb. You know, there's talk of Autumn Runs just to the east of this is an R20 subdivision, and if it was rezoned to R20, that would allow approximately 27 homes. There's what we call, it's an older category, but a conservation subdivision down Moon Road across Florence called Covenant Place, and that has a density of about 2.1 units per acre, which would be similar to an R15 subdivision, which if this was R15, it would allow roughly 32 homes. So just to kind of put it in perspective that way, so they are talking about more homes than you know, a traditional subdivision would allow. But the Cobb County ordinance takes into account the fact that senior developments are less intense. They're less impactful on the community than a traditional subdivision. So under the Cobb County ordinance for residential senior living, they would be allowed to go to 4 units an acre maximum, which would be 61 homes, which is what they initially applied for. So they are within the guidance of the county ordinance and land use plan with what they're asking at 55 homes. So I want to, you know, just, you know, make that part clear, because I know there was information brought up on that. I also want to mention, if you just see on the south side of Moon Road, you can see property that's in the city of Powder Springs. That's about 2.1 units an acre as well. So that's, you know, once again, more like the R15 subdivision, right where he's pointing right now. So I just want to let you know, we kind of looked at the area and that, and we do realize that, you know, a couple of years ago, at the very end of Moon Road to the east of this, where it dead ends, there is a, you know, residential senior living that was approved a couple of years ago that's being built as well. But we haven't approved a whole lot of subdivisions in this area. We did one on Gaydon Road in 2018, an R20 open space community. But really, we haven't done a lot in this area compared to what we've been doing in other areas of the county, especially, you know, as many as has gone north of Macklin Road in District 1 has had a lot over the last 7-8 years. And then we've had a lot in other areas of regular subdivisions. One of the issues was brought up, burden on the schools that, you know, seniors 62 and up don't pay school taxes, and how much revenue the school system would get if they did pay school taxes. But that's really fuzzy math, because the way the school is supposed to set a budget is they're supposed to, set a budget of how much money they need to operate the school system, educate kids, all those things, and then look at their total assessment from the tax assessor and come up with a mill rate to collect that amount of money. So if you included all the senior properties, that would be a bigger assessment, which would make the mill rate go down a little bit. Probably not significantly, because when you add it all together, it's a small amount compared to the whole thing. But when we hear about how they're losing $14–16 million a year, not really. The rest of us are paying to kind of subsidize the seniors, but that was a choice that the Cobb voters made back in the 90s, I believe, and 78, okay, a long time ago. So, it's really not before us, on the school thing. The other thing is, if you build a traditional subdivision, that usually brings lots of kids, because people with young families tend to buy in traditional subdivisions. And every house that you put in there is going to be a bigger burden on the school system than the taxes that it pays. That's just the fact that, houses with kids going don't pay the full cost of those kids. So if you're worried about the quality of the kids, the senior living actually is a positive versus a traditional subdivision. If you're worried that we have underperforming schools, if you just throw more kids in with just a tiny bit more money, it's not going to solve the problem. So I wanted to mention that. There was some mention in the emails, well, everybody from here will go shop in Hiram, so they won't pay into the Splosh sales tax, and that's just the way Splosh works. When you buy things in the county, it goes into this county. You buy things in Paulding County, it goes into that county. But, there's plenty of people who live in Paulding who shop in Cobb. I used to live in Paulding up in the Ackworth area, and 99% of my shopping was in Cobb. So it goes back and forth. And the other thing is, when we're considering zoning, state law purposely separates schools from county government. It's a whole separate school board, whole separate elected officials. So, the Board of Commissioners really has no say in how the schools run or that. So, if you have issues with schools, I would address them there. One of the reasons why, moving on to traffic, the county recognizes that senior developments are less intense, is that typically the traffic studies that are done by all the traffic engineers show that senior developments generate about the third of the amount of traffic per household that a typical subdivision does. And that just takes into account they aren't running out as many trips, and that's third during peak hours. And, people put off not going at 7, 8 a.m. They try and go a little bit later when the traffic's lighter and things like that. Now, we get that some of the people are still working, still doing the traditional schedule, but they don't have, kids at home that they're running out constantly to baseball games and to the school and all of those things. You don't have teenagers who are driving or young adults still living in the households and things like that typically. So it really does, from a traffic standpoint, greatly reduce it over a traditional neighborhood. And I say that to point out that, if this development for senior living, somewhere in the 40-some households, up to 50 or so, it's probably going to be about the same amount of traffic as if they just develop it at R30 in there. So, it won't be significantly different. If it's developed at R20, R20 is going to generate more traffic than than this, and R15 even more. So with regard to the intersection of Moon and Florence Road being dangerous, we're going to get development in this area one way or another, no matter what we do. I just talked about how this isn't going to be any more intense than if it remained R30. So if that intersection's a big concern, I encourage everybody to work with DOT, contact DOT about your issues you're having there. There's also some splosh meetings coming around, which usually the splosh money's used to improve roadways and intersections and things like that. So get with your commissioners and that, but it's not a reason that we would turn down development in this case, because it's not going to be any more impactful than what they could do today anyway. And with that, somebody also brought up an article in a number of the emails about appraisal, and their article saying if you put small homes near large homes, it hurts the value of large homes. From my quick review of the information about that article online, I didn't actually find the actual article. They were talking about within a neighborhood. So in other words, if the houses in a neighborhood are 2,000 square feet and somebody builds a 4,000 square foot house, it's not going to sell for as much as if you had a neighborhood of 4,000 square foot houses. But when you get to a senior living versus rural lots, it's a whole different kind of buyer, whole different kind of thing, and I don't think you can draw that same comparison off of it. And in general, with regarding the number of RSLs in the general area, in zoning, we really can't say there's too many gas stations, there's too many convenience stores, there's too many dollar stores. We hear about all the different categories, and that's not really, something we take in. It's basically left under Georgia law to supply and demand. If there's too many of them, people won't come buy them, and they won't get funding to build it. So, from that standpoint, that's there. I did want to bring Dave Braden up to talk about stormwater management, because that was something that came up quite a bit. There's a couple ponds here to deal with and worry about. So go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, Dave Braden with the Stormwater Management Division.
I know you heard a lot of the comments that were said, and do you want to talk about kind of in general how stormwater management works in a subdivision, and then what you'll do about
Sure.
protecting these ponds?
Yeah, as you already mentioned, it's the current property is zoned R30, and which they're already allowed under the current zoning to develop it at R30, which would allow 35% impervious coverage on the development. We've just recently received a revised plan, so I'm not exactly sure what the proposed impervious is for the current plan, but it's not going to be significantly higher than the 35%. In any event, our stormwater code requires that any development is required to provide stormwater management on the site so that they do not increase the peak discharges off the site from its undeveloped state, which is a wooded site. So they're going to be required to put stormwater management on the site to not increase peak discharges. Now, because we do have ponds in two directions, it was already mentioned, the Bashir's Pond there to the northeast, and I think it's Poston Pond that's right there on the other side of Moon Road to the south. Part of the downstream analysis when the development gets designed will be to analyze both of those ponds and make sure that the flow that does go through them does not impact either of those ponds, as well as a pre and post sediment survey to make sure that any sediment that might escape from the site is determined, and then they'd have to remove that if there is any. Hopefully not, but if there would be, we would have a baseline to determine how much left the site if there was a failure.
Okay.
Is that good?
Okay, so basically you're confident you can, work with the engineers there, and you're an engineer, and
That's right.
and make sure it doesn't impact the people off-site.
Adversely, yes.
Yeah.
Right. Any other questions?
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you, Dave.
Okay. I don't think I need to bring Amy up. I kind of covered that. So with all of that, and I don't know if anybody else wants to make comments at this point, or you want me to kind
Go
of give
ahead
some
and- yeah,
direction?
why don't you go ahead
Okay.
and make your motion, and then
Okay.
if anybody has any comments.
And what I'm going to do is provide some direction and then end up making a motion to hold this, which means we don't think it's really ready to go at this point. I do think, you know, the use fits within the guidelines of Cobb County ordinance and that. It is a little too dense still, too intense. We're trying to cram a little bit more in there than what reasonably fits, given the shape and nature of the lot. So I'd like to see them reduce that probably by 8 or so lots. And, you know, while the streets can be private and gated and that, we'd like them to be developed to the full public standards. That way, if the HOA decides in the future they want to just make them public streets, they're configured such that the county will accept them. And on the plan, I'd like to see what I'll term the potential future right-of-way on the plan that would be owned by the HOA, so that they could dedicate that to the county in the future if they wanted to. And what that means is usually around a street, it's a 50-foot wide area that the county would require if they were receiving streets, and there's design standards and a whole lot of technicalities that the traffic engineers get into. The site plan we have right now just shows kind of house placements, but it doesn't show any lot lines, but they would be individual lots, and since RSL is a site plan specific zoning, we need the lot lines on the site plan. I'll leave it to them to figure out how to configure. They might want to consider dropping like lots 41 through 47 and 1 or 2 on the cul-de-sac. If you look at the cul-de-sac on the plan, the driveways don't connect to the road at all, and really don't have a way to do it. They've just crammed a little too much in there. The rear alley, yeah, go four-wheeling to get out of your driveway. The rear alley is a little too close to the property line. It's sitting within the required buffer. And speaking of buffers, we would like to see the buffer drawn on the plan as well. I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, John, isn't it a 20-foot buffer required for RSL? 20. Yeah, 20. Kevin had mentioned 30, and maybe you're intending to do more than what's required. But I wanted to say the requirement's 20, and that buffer, because you're looking at private streets, would need to go along your entrance there as well. So we talked about that. The guest parking really needs to be distributed throughout the community. Right now, it's pretty concentrated, most of it around the clubhouse and a few spots on that back alley. Consider maybe putting some parallel parking, what I call bump outs, throughout the community to provide some guest parking around it. And, you know, one of the things, when I refer to guest parking, our ordinance requires them that they put some parking based on the number of units in there for guests to park, so that they aren't just parking on the streets, blocking the streets. And I think the elevations need a little bit of work. We probably need to see more than 3 of them. And, you know, I'd like to see at least 50% brick or stacked stone on them. The minimum square footage, you know, we'd like to see higher than what's proposed on it. And also no variance on the sign. We don't need a hanging sign out there. Traditionally, what you have is a ground-based monument sign. So those are kind of the directions, and with that, I'm going to make a motion that we hold this till our April hearing.
We have a motion to hold. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Call the question. And that is held for 5-0 until the April meeting. Okay, John, where we at now?
Has the applicant come in for rezoning case Z3, David Mena? No, he's on his way, so he may be here in a few more minutes, so we'll hear the next case.
Okay.
Rezoning case Z14 of 2020, Andres Estrada requests a rezoning from GC to NRC for the purpose of light oil repair and office in land lot 34, the 18th district. The property is located at the western end of Cindy Ann Boulevard and on the east side of James Road. Is the applicant present? Is the applicant here for rezoning case Z14, Andres Estrada? Is there anyone here opposed to this rezoning case? We'll give him a call too, Madam Chair.
Do we have many cases left? Do we have long enough to wait?
I'll talk slow.
Oh, you could do that?
Let me tell everybody about my bronchitis.
Okay,
We do. The people out there know which one they're on. Have no fear.
okay, move on to the next case, and we'll call that applicant up. Rezoning case Z19 of 2020, Trayton LLC requests a rezoning from R20 to RSL for the purpose of non-supportive senior living in land lot 218 of the 16th district. The property is located on the northeast side of North Booth Road, south of Shiloh Road. The applicant's representative is present. Is there anyone here opposed to rezoning case Z19 of 2020? Let the record show there's 2 people opposed. All those wishing to address the board, please come forward to be sworn in.
The GIS is fine for this. Thanks. To start with, yeah. Good morning, Commissioners. Again, Kevin Moore here on behalf of Trayton LLC in this application for rezoning. This application is concerning 12.1 acres that's located on North Booth Road, just really east of its intersection with Shiloh Road. This property is 12 acres. It is adjacent also to the elementary school, and you can see that on your GIS aerial that's shown on your screens now, so that you can see also where the intersection of North Booth, Shiloh Road, as well as the school, and you can see where this property fits in within this general area. As you look at this aerial of the various zoning categories, what you will see is a variety of residential categories stretching from, at its most dense, R20 to RA5, located just almost across North Booth. And you'll see RA4s, RA5s, R15s, and R20s throughout this area, and that's fairly common. Certainly as you move from North Booth to its intersection with Bell's Ferry, which is further down the road to the east, again, you also have a variety of residential categories in this area. And I think that's why when you review the staff's comments and recommendations, they are recommending approval from a use standpoint. Again, we are seeking residential senior living. Trayton is for an age-restricted community here. And I think that's why staff saw it the same way, and that is this area is residential, but it has a variety of residential densities, and what's being proposed by Trayton is consistent with that overall fabric of the community at this location here at Shiloh and North Booth Road. I want to go through the site plan. Again, this one was held from last month, and we did some redesign on it as well. that reduced it from a total of 44 requested homes to a total of 42.
All right, turning to the site plan. This is North Booth Road here. What we have done primarily is really look at this area, which during some of our meetings, there is a small stream here, and we want to make sure that we're doing what we can to protect that area. And so what we did is reduce the number of homes proposed for this area adjacent to the stream. In addition, that allowed us to kind of have more of an expanded amenity area, which we thought was also a good location for that. Less homes against that stream buffer. We are recognizing that stream buffer, recognizing the impervious surface buffer as well. That area falls off, and we are making sure that from our grading standpoint, this area is not graded with walls or anything else that will interfere or impact the stream. And as you can see, we've located preliminarily a stormwater pond here, so that's where our stormwater will be able to be drained from this area to here, and not, which we would not be allowed to do, is go into the stream at that location. Again, this is the Cobb County Board of Education. This is the location of that school as shown on your aerial and GIS map. We have provided for the perimeter buffer. Also, one note, it's our reading of the ordinance that the perimeter setback is 30 feet, which we have included and shown on this plan, except along the public right-of-way where it is 20 feet. And it's been noted in some commentary or some comments from the Bells Ferry Civic Association that we were not meeting the code. That's our reading of the code, and so we believe we're meeting the terms of the code, that it's a 20-foot setback along the public right-of-way and a 30-foot perimeter setback along the other boundary lines. If we get clarity on that and we're wrong, then we can make adjustments, but we believe that that's how the code is written and stated, so we are not seeking a variance along the public right-of-way for that setback. Our plan is drawn to comply with it. Again, we think this particular area as a whole, and when you think of this area, I want to try to think beyond simply Shiloh and North Booth Road. The area as a whole has seen growth, but it also has seen some tremendous success with other age-restricted developments that have been extremely, extremely successful within this area.
And really, those go hand in hand with a residential senior living or an age-restricted community. The growth overall of the area that has seen the successful growth in residences and people and convenient shopping and so forth that has occurred also means that for a residential senior living development or an age-restricted community, the top two buyers are people that live within 5 miles of this location. It's people that want to stay in their community, or it's people whose parents want to move closer to them within this community. So that's why we believe we've seen the level of success that other age-restricted communities have had in the larger area, going beyond simply this intersection, and also why they are, and as Commissioner Porter pointed out, the folks that buy in age-restricted communities are very active members of the community. They spend the money in the community. That's where your restaurants, your local retails and services, those increase. The spending increases in those areas, which is very beneficial to the area as a whole. In fact, in speaking with Trayton, there are other age-restricted communities that they have currently. A couple, one in Marietta, one in West Cobb, out on Mars Hill, and they've seen for them, their average age for their buyer is 65 and older, really. And that's being conservative, and that's because, again, we've talked about this a lot, but I think it is important to note that while the age restriction is 55 years of age and older, because that's what the Fair Housing Act says it has to be, it's a decision that people have made to change the way they want to live and the quality of life. They have made a decision that says, you know what, I want to live in an age-restricted community. I want to live in what is maybe smaller square footage, but the dollar per square foot of the home I'm living in is actually higher. I want to live where I can be with others that are of my same age, that are going through the same things that I am, and living the same type of life that I am. And they make a decision to do that, to move down or to move here, to be closer to grandkids or to stay in their community. And those are decisions that people make. Doesn't mean just because you turn 55, you're going to make that decision. It just means if at some point there are a lot of people every single day that are making that decision. And just like in the 70s and 80s when this county was rezoning property and developing properties for single families subdivisions over and over again, because that's who was coming here and that's who was buying homes. We were making subdivisions so we could house and have those options for those families that were moving here. And that continues to happen just at a much slower pace today. But what we do have as a high pace are people in this county who are turning 55 years of age or older, who are turning 65, who are turning 70, who are coming to this county, who are coming to this metropolitan Atlanta area, and who are making this decision. So that's how I want to live. I want to live like that. And I think part of the consideration is, do we want to make sure we're also meeting that housing demand as a county? And I think that's important as well. And I think the county is reacting to that, both from a market standpoint and a zoning standpoint and a community standpoint. And I think that's a positive. And again, something for this planning commission to consider as another point of that. And that is how we are trying to meet that housing need. Staff has noted that in several of its comments about RSLs, to meet the housing need because it is there and it is very real. With that, again, we believe this is a great location for residential senior living. There is school traffic that's generated right here that blocks up this intersection a good bit, makes it a difficult intersection to navigate. But with RSL, as has always been noted, that's the exact time when they're not driving as a whole. So if you want to lessen impact on traffic, this is the way to go. And respectfully, we request your recommendation for approval to the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. We'll hear from the opposition at this time.
Good morning, Chairwoman Williams and fellow commissioners. My name is Diane Shepard. I'm here speaking on behalf of the Bells Ferry Civic Association. There's no doubt that the population in Cobb County is growing, but our roads are not expanding at the same pace. We ask that you consider tipping points. North Booth Road is rated a D, and that information comes from an outdated traffic study. The county does not have the money to improve all the roads in the county that are rated D or F. At some point, the citizens of Cobb County are going to be asked to, quote, just learn to live with it when it comes to gridlock and morning and evening commutes. One high-density development at a time, the roads are being overburdened. There are 2 schools on North Booth, Chalker Elementary and Palmer Middle School. The students need to get to school on time. Before you think the BFCA is always against high-density developments, let me remind you that we supported the 35.8-acre RSL on North Booth that's directly across from Chalker Elementary. In fact, we had the developer speak at our annual meeting. What we do not support is the county turning small plots of lands into RSLs, in this case, 12 acres. For Z19, we feel a good compromise would be for Trayton to build single-family homes. That's their purview right now, is that they've recently gotten into the RSL market, but they're currently a residential home builder. Our board of directors met with Mr. Kevin Moore at his office regarding Z19, and this is what we recommended as a compromise, single-family homes. RSLs are very profitable for developers, so the county is going to be under continuing pressure to turn small parcels of land into RSLs. Both schools on North Booth have a capacity for additional students. This parcel directly abuts Palmer Middle School. We feel the best use of this property would be homes where families and students can live. We hope you see the wisdom in our position and deny the RSL. Tulin Evert is going to speak also.
Hi, I'm Tulin Avard. I'm with the Bells Ferry Civic Association, and I'm here just to fill in some other information from what Diane was saying. We are opposing Z19 because it's a high-density, non-supportive residential senior living development, and we don't think it belongs in a single-family R15 residential area with a flume of low-density residential. And Here's an overhead just showing all the white is all the low density around that area. And we know that an RSL can fit into a low density if it meets certain criteria, which we feel this one doesn't. We also talked about the schools, that they're both under capacity, and I know we just discussed this in the previous zoning case, the effect of students in schools and older residents. We do, due to this proposed zoning category, because it's high density, and it's gonna be even more dense if it's allowed a variance of the 10 feet between the 15 feet between the houses. So we ask that it go back to the 15. And it says, according to county code, the overall density of a development may be reduced due to topography, drainage, deforestation, or sediment erosion control concerns. And all of these apply to the development. I have another overhead here, which shows that this is a largely heavily forested piece of property with many mature hardwoods and substantial changes in elevation. At the back of the development and down the hill sit several vulnerable houses. Clear-cutting this land will cause multiple issues with drainage and erosion. A less dense development would allow many of the hardwoods to be saved and incorporated into the site plan and would greatly benefit those properties in the immediate area. We are having erosion issues now with previous zoning requests that were approved. It's difficult to account for future weather patterns. As we all know, 100-year floods now happen every decade or so. So we need to plan for the unknown when considering zoning requests and really take into consideration erosion issues. As was discussed, North Booth has a D level of service for traffic. No new traffic counts have been done, as was discussed last month by the BOC at another zoning case for an RSL, that doubling the number of houses that can be built in an RSL versus single family actually causes more traffic and not less. Also, living right next door to a school can have its own issues with noise. They have loud buzzards going off throughout the day to signal class changes, and the school buses will pass that subdivision 4 times a day at various times of the day. So sometimes during rush hour and sometimes not at rush hour, but because you have 2 schools, there are 4 times that the school buses will go by. And we appreciate the attorney Kevin Moore meeting with us, but we came to an impasse. Like they said, these property owners have a right to sell the property, but we feel that an RSL is too intense in this area due to erosion issues and drainage, and so we prefer that they build single family. So we're not saying we want to leave it the way it is, but please look at a less intense with single family homes where you can save a lot of the hardwoods, incorporate them into the overall plan. So with that, we will respectfully ask that you recommend denial of Z19. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? Hearing and seeing none, the public hearing portion is closed, and it's back to this board, and if y'all would allow me, this is in my district. This is, as we heard on the previous case, the RSLs, we do get comments all the time about the age restriction and about the tax and about the relief, the tax relief, and the schools. Those are all issues that we hear. But we hear those issues also if it's just a normal single-family residential home. The emails I received on this was wanting us to build single-family detached so that kids could go to the school. When you go out to North Booth Road, the subdivisions on North Booth are older subdivisions built in the 30s, 20s. They've been well maintained, but those will be what we call recycled. People will sell, those will become the starter homes of another young family. So young families with kids will eventually move in here, and the schools will be back where they're supposed to be. You can't force a developer to build single family, especially Trayton. Trayton is known for single family development homes. If Trayton thought that you could build single family detached in here and do well, they would have done it. On a 12 acres, it doesn't make it very viable given some of the other constraints of the property to do a single family detached on this piece of property. But the thing that did strike me when I went out there, and it was again yesterday afternoon in the rain. The school has traffic. There's two schools out here. Both have traffic, but one next door in particular. If you put a single detached, you increase your traffic. You'd have more to deal with coming on North Booth. There is a lot of traffic anyway coming off Bells Ferry onto North Booth. So I think that the RSL would be something that would fit in the area. Staff, when they looked at the comments, didn't think it would have a negative impact on the adjacent properties, especially when almost across the road you have an RA5, which is more intense also. So you've got R15. It's just a mix out there of older subdivisions. So what I would like to do, where's Kevin? Kevin, could you come back up here, please? Kevin, this, the site plan that we had up, is that that was the newest one with the 44, right?
It's with 42, yes.
42, was that the one dated December the 5th?
It's actually, it's dated February 26th.
February 26, okay. Thank you. In your elevations, do you have any pictures?
Yes.
Could you put
Sure.
up on the board the elevations, please?
And I'll have him help me flip through these, but these are also attached to the stipulation letter, which was submitted
Okay.
last week.
All right. Thank you. As you can see from the pictures, these are attractive, look like single family, but in fact are built for the 55 and older. I think it would fit in nicely adjacent to the school. I think it would bring in some of the people who would buy in here would be wanting to live closer to their kids who live in the immediate area. It has a lot of positive things about it and the landscaping. There is an issue, I believe, I wasn't aware of the setback issue, and John, would you clarify that on the setback, what Kevin was asking on the right-of-way?
Kevin's correct. The setback along the right-of-way is 20 feet.
Okay.
Adjacent to the other property, it is 30 feet.
So that's what I thought, but the only issue is the 15 feet between the structure.
Correct.
That's the only variance that they're requesting.
Yeah.
And then the other question, the other two developments, the RSLs on North Booth, are those also built at 10 units? 10 feet between the structures?
I'm not sure about the one that's further north.
I know
Sherman
one
Woods.
of them is.
The one on Wood Lake Road, I'm not sure, what that one was.
Okay. But most of them we're seeing now, they are being built at 10,
I would say probably the majority of them are 10 feet between units.
majority. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does look more like it. Okay, thank you, John. Does anyone else, well, I'm gonna have Amy come up here. Amy, we had some discussions, and I'm gonna make sure.
Amy Diaz, Cobb DOT.
Hey, Amy. We've been having back and forth some comments on Kevin about the traffic study, and you had brought up in one of yours about some stipulations from the revised site plan.
Yes, so the revised site plan is not showing the left turn lane that we are currently recommending. We have not yet received the traffic study that's going to look at that left turn lane and determine whether or not they're going to ask for a variance. But that left turn lane is included in the stipulation letter. I just didn't want this to be zoned to the site plan, which does not show the left turn lane, without that being taken into account.
Okay, and I had caught that. Thank you for the follow-up. And then Kevin sent me another email that he had put it in his stipulation letter so that we didn't run into the problem of not being included. So, and I don't think I was going to zone it to the site plan anyway because of your issue. So
Okay,
thank you. Does anyone
you.
else have any questions, for Amy? Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Dave, can I have Dave come up too, briefly?
Yes, ma'am. Dave Braden again with Stormwater Management Division.
David, in looking at this piece of property, it does drop off in the back. Is there any particular things that might impede this where you couldn't handle the stormwater runoff? Is it going to be more challenging than another piece of property, or?
Well, it's not going to be any more challenging than it being developed as an R20 parcel. So 'cause
Okay.
the lots, there would be lots bordering that stream buffer on the back regardless of the development. But they are showing staying out of the stream buffer and out of the impervious setback. So that would be what we would be looking for in a plan, whether it was R20 or RSL.
So you don't see anything that would occur that wouldn't normally happen in an RSL that you couldn't handle?
No, and again, as my comments reflect, if with the reduced lot number, they may be under the 45% anyway, but my comments do reflect that if the underlying zoning would allow 35%, but if the development exceeds 45%, then they would be required to do an elevated stormwater management, as my comments would require.
Oh, I think we're going to get them down to the 35 cents.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Does anyone else have any questions?
David, on the site plan that's up on the board, it shows a stream on the right-hand side of the property. Is that not actually flowing water?
I don't believe so. It shows up on a stream buffer map, but not all of our stream buffer lines on the county's buffer map have been field verified. And I think Frank Gibson with erosion control has looked at this and determined, because the road there is the watershed boundary. So I would have been surprised if it would have had a buffer on it anyway. But yeah, I think that has been verified by Frank.
Okay, but if it were to be something, then you take that up and.
Oh yeah, they would have to meet the same stream buffer requirements as the one behind it, right?
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. I am going to make a motion, and then if there's any comments after the motion. I think I'm going to make a motion that we approve this development for an RSL. I would like to reduce the density to 3 units per acre. And that would include this, and I'm not going to do it to the site plan only because we have some traffic issues, but I'll address that through the letter. The fire comments, the water and sewer comments, stormwater management, Cobb DOT, and then Kevin Moore's letter was where he added some the stipulations that we've been talking about. The DOT, that would be Kevin's letter. Just a moment. February 26th, and that would include the stipulations that we've been talking about, the turn lane. I'm going to also make it subject to the elevations that Kevin put up on the board, and they're in the step ladder, so be subject to those. Am I forgetting anything? I'm going to go ahead and recommend the variance, but the 10 feet between the structures. I'm going to recommend that, and I think I have covered everything. So that would be my motion.
Second for discussion.
All right. So Andy seconds for discussion.
Can I be heard for just a moment?
Sure.
Yep, Madam Chairman, I appreciate your reducing the density. I think that's a good move here. My objection will simply be to the variance. So I wanted to let you know I did appreciate your requirement to reduce the density.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Just a couple things. First, regarding the elevations, the three that are included in the stipulation letter, one of them is absent, appears to me to be absent of any brick or stone. And so it leaves it wide open as to whether that would be incorporated into the facades on all the homes. And of course, they've got to sell the homes, so maybe we don't need to
I don't
control
think so.
that in
Yeah,
this
I think
area,
one
but I
of-
wanted to
yeah.
just point that out.
Thank you.
And then I want to second Commissioner Malloy's objection to the reduction of the 15-foot. With the reduction of the density, I would hope that maybe they can.
Pull it apart.
Yeah, pull them apart. And if you look at the elevations, you know, when they draw those things, I think in one way, anyway, they show them with the more space in between, because that's what residential neighborhoods look like. And I think when you push them closer together, and it may not be the developer's intention to do that in all cases, but even in a significant number of the cases, I think it takes away from that community feel that this area is hoping we can preserve. So I'd like to suggest that maybe we consider putting that restriction back in, but of course that's
We
up
can
to
do
you.
that. Okay.
Thank you.
I'll just add on, I agree with the 15-foot with the reduction in density. They ought to be able to do that. But the other thing is RSL requires site plan specific,
I'm sorry.
requires it to be site plan specific zoning. So maybe we should just give direction as to what to change on the site plan and have them have a new site plan before the
I
BOC.
think John, do we have to, we don't have to zone it to the site plan, do we?
You know, it's possible that the applicant could address these comments and have a site plan submitted before the BOC hearing.
But we don't have
and-
to do it
And then the board
today. Yeah,
could zone it to that plan if the applicant can meet all your requirements.
okay.
Yeah, but RSL is a site plan specific zoning, right?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't think we have,
So you can direct them to have
have
one before
one
the BOC
and
with the
include that turn
changes.
lane that we're talking about.
And
Yeah.
reduce to 3.0
Yeah.
and
And he'd
15
have to have
feet.
all that ready by then. Okay.
Right.
Good points. Thanks, guys. All right, is that all the comments? All right, then I would like to revise my comments, and I think I can do it because we haven't called for the vote. Then I would, since I'm reducing the density to 3 units per acre, then I would go that I would not grant the variance on the 15 feet between structure, because I think by reducing it, that they can meet the 15 feet between the structure. Also, I would ask the applicant to have the site plan ready by the Board of Commissioners meeting that would show the Cobb DOT comments that is addressed in your letter. So, and the 3.0 density per acre.
And
So
those revisions are acceptable to the
All
second.
right, so that would be my motion. Call the question. And that's approved 5-0. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for all the.
Okay, the applicant has shown up for rezoning case Z3, so we're going to recall that one.
Okay,
Rezoning case Z3 of 2020, David Mena requests rezoning from R20 to R15 for the purpose of a residential subdivision in land lot 12 of the 20th district. The property is located at the southeast corner of Baker Road and Woodstock Road. The applicant is here. Is there anyone here opposed to rezoning case Z3? Let the record show there's no one opposed. Will the applicant please come forward to be sworn in?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, this guy, that's fine. Good morning. Thanks very much, by the way. My request is pretty simple. The plat, I'm sorry, my name is David Mena. I'm a developer for this property. The current zoning on it is R20, and it fits 4 houses in a small cul-de-sac that we have on here. We're looking to reduce it to R15 as an economic consideration so we can put 5 houses in. We don't think it would be a burdensome, no additional traffic, relatively no additional traffic for the area. It's a relatively flat piece of land. It has 8 feet of slope from one side to the other. They're all going to be slab houses. We're going to put craftsman-style houses in. The entrance coming in off of Baker Road and the small cul-de-sac in the middle. It's not a super complicated or anything.
Like size of homes,
The
what style of homes?
size of the homes will be from 2,800 to 3,200 square feet. There'll be two-story houses. Craftsman style, board and batten, some stone and brick mixed in, hardy plank siding, traditional low-E windows, just price range somewhere between 350 and 400,000.
Okay. And timeframe on building it or anything?
We'd like to get started in April and have all 5 of them up by the end of the year. That's what we're hoping.
Have you done any development anywhere else?
Right up the road from here in Cherokee County, I'm the developer for the property of Oakdale Woods. It's also known as the Retreated Oak Grove. And another piece of property up in Cherokee County, a farm gate with 5 farmhouses up there. I'm not going to be the actual builder. I have a builder that's going to build the houses. His name is Tim Morris, and he's a super builder. He's really good.
All right. Anything else you'd like to tell us?
I think it's
I have to say this.
they're all slab. They're all
You
going to
have
be
10 minutes now. Anything
okay.
else?
All right, they're going to be all slab houses because of the grade. There's very, very little grade. The detention pond for the property is going to be right here. And we've talked to Amy from DOT, and we've done some corrective things in the front to donate a little bit of land and give the proper radiuses for the entryway.
What about your signage up front?
We'd like to put brown brick walls coming in and a monument on the side right here when you first come in, but it'll be a low monument built into the brick because of line of sight, and the corner kind of juts out right there, but very very low, maybe only 4 feet tall.
All right, thank you. Anything else? All right, thanks. Have a
Okay,
seat.
thank you.
Was there any opposition to this? Hearing and seeing none, it's back to this board, and it's Fred. Finally.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. No, I would have been very happy to have a quiet day, but I'm glad Mr. Minna could join us here today. And just to show we were all listening, there probably will be an increase in traffic by precisely 2 cars. Is that fair? Okay.
Approximately.
I see the staff has recommended approval. My motion will be to do the same.
Second.
So
Have a
the
motion,
the
second.
approval will be subject to all comments shown on page 1, all staff comments. Just want to make sure the second is of that motion.
Would you consider it for the consent agenda?
That'd be fine.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Call the question. And that is approved 5-0. And if y'all would allow us, we're going to take a
Okay.
break.
And David, just come back here in 2 weeks for the Board of Commissioners hearing. Okay, thank you.
We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back. Everyone, we'll get started with our next case, John.
Okay, has the applicant come in for rezoning case Z14 of 2020, Andres Estrada?
Is that Andre?
Just walked in.
Oh, my goodness. Okay, go ahead and call Andre.
All right. All right.
Let him get his breath. Go ahead and call him.
Rezoning case Z14 of 2020, Andres Estrada requests rezoning from GC to NRC for the purpose of light auto repair and an office in land lot 34, the 18th district. The property is located at the western end of Cindy Ann Boulevard and on the east side of James Road. The applicant is here. Is there anyone here opposed to rezoning case Z14? Let the record show there's no one opposed. Would the applicant please come forward to be sworn in?
First time for me, so. how you
Get your
doing?
breath. We can wait a moment while you get your breath.
Okay, so the process is I just tell you what.
You should
what
tell us your name first.
Okay, my name is Andres Estrada. I am the owner of Automania. It's been a car dealership. I was a buy here, pay here for 16 years. I used to have a shop here in Marietta for about 4.5, 5 years. And now I'm trying to get a shop just to service my inventory and my customers. And it's in Mapleton. My dealership is in Austell, about half a mile from the shop or the building that I'm trying to make a shop. It's light commercial right now, and all I'm trying just to is fix my vehicles and no public. Don't want the headache.
What are you going to do? Any improvements to the site? Or?
So we need to move the fence because of there's a zoning for that, which we're waiting for a surveyor to go and mark the fence where it needs to be. That's something we're doing. We're enclosing the dumpster. Also, one of the requirements or something that we need to do, we are getting a soundproof a compressor. That way, even though we're not bothering anybody because there's no housing or homes around, everything is basically our shops, but I'm getting a very, this doesn't make any noise at all. The building is enclosed and is soundproof, or not soundproof, but is insulated. Thank you. So I don't think we don't have any issue with noise. If we have to do something about it, I don't have any problem. Actually, it would be in my benefit if I can cover it, if I have to. So,
Okay.
and that's pretty much in the fence on the other side. Actually, is I need to move it because it belongs to me. It belongs the fence on one of the side, on the west side, is going to be moved about 4 feet because that's part of the property.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Just have a seat, and
Okay.
we'll, if we have any other questions, we'll get back to you.
Thank you.
Any opposition? Seeing and hearing none, back to this board and go. It would be yours.
Yeah, we took a look at this case, and there's, obviously this is off Powell Drive in a area that has a lot of automotive uses, so I don't think that's really an issue. What we want to make sure is it's a nice, clean automotive use. This is applying for light automotive repair, so there'd be no auto body work or anything else. And maybe I'll have the applicant come back up just to confirm that.
Okay.
Okay, I just want to make sure you understand that you can't do auto body work here.
Correct. No,
Okay.
no, I don't want
Okay.
that
Okay,
headache.
no painting, no
Yeah,
anything
no
like that.
customers or besides just our customers. We got about 600 accounts that we service. We offer a 24-month warranty on the vehicles that we sell. So there's a lot of work right there. So I don't need more complications.
Okay. Okay, and also you understand that you can't sell cars from the location or deliver them or do anything
I
like that?
completely, I've been dealing with Cobb County for 18 years on that side. Never have an issue with the board. Maybe one time, 3 buyer's guides that I didn't put. Besides that, I never, and I understand the rules, and yes.
Okay, okay, I want to make sure you know that, and you know that the dumpster enclosure will have to be out of a masonry and have steel doors to the, and just check with building inspections and that, to the
Correct.
development standards before you start building.
Yes.
I'll make sure you have that. And
Oh, one more
since you're
thing.
moving the
I'm sorry.
fence, I'll probably have you move the fence off the right-of-way too, or the fence along the front is on the right-of-way, meaning it's on
Yes,
county property?
that is correct. Yes, it's on the
So-
county property. It doesn't turn.
Right.
It's a cul-de-sac, and it doesn't make the whole turn. We need to move it about
Right.
3-4 feet.
Right.
That's what, one thing that I forgot are the doors. So right now it has 4 big access doors. We're closing 2. Because it used to be a warehouse. So we only need 2 access doors, and we're closing 2. Just something I needed to add.
Good. And also what is your driveway wasn't permitted by DOT at the time it was done. Somebody just went and put that pavement to smooth out the curb.
Oh, yes.
So I'm going to just ask you to work with DOT to correct the driveway, any changes that they require. They're going to need to
That's-
see if that's creating a problem or not, and for drainage and things like that.
Got it.
So, okay.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that we're doing, since we're doing the fence. It has to be basically done because we have to cut a piece of concrete, a big
Right.
piece. So we need to resurface all that.
Okay.
And that will be part of that.
Okay, good, good. Okay, you can have a seat again, I guess. Nobody else had questions, did you? Okay, and one of the things I'm gonna do in here is pull in a couple of the things that were in the impact statement analysis that he did with the application that Mapleton Improvement just wanted to make sure we included, and that's why they're not here, because he had already committed to it in writing. So with that, I'll make a motion to recommend approval of Z14, subject to all staff comments and recommendations not otherwise in conflict. Light automotive repair use only, no body shop work allowed. No automotive sales or delivery from location. No access to James Road. Dumpster enclosure to be built to all development standards, including steel gates. 2 loading docks to be removed. No heavy trucks or equipment parked on site. No outdoor storage. All landscaping to be maintained. All fencing to be maintained in good condition. Fence to be removed from right-of-way. And applicant to work with Cobb DOT to correct driveway. And then the district commissioner may approve minor modifications except for those that increase the overall building square footage, cause a reduction and an improved buffer, which there aren't any, so that one's really not needed. Change an access location to a different roadway. Change that is in conflict with an express stipulation or condition of zoning or requires a variance or violates Cobb County ordinance. That's the motion.
Okay, we have a second?
I'd like to second. Oh, sorry, I voted. I'd like to second for discussion. I
You
just
can't
have one quick
discuss, you
question.
already voted.
I have one quick.
Did you include that on the consent agenda?
You know, actually, let's add that. You're okay with that?
I'm okay
So
with that.
inclusion on the consent agenda for BOC.
Do we need, my only question is, do we need to mention that there's no outside work allowed?
Well, we can,
Does that?
it doesn't hurt to throw in there. You know, all work to be done inside the building, no repairs allowed outside.
I cannot do it anyway. I don't have the main power space, and I have plenty of work.
Okay.
I have 600 accounts, plus the vehicles that we sell. And I have, like I said, I used to own.
Okay.
What I was
Okay.
talking about was
Yeah.
work physically taking place out in the parking lot.
Yeah, it has to be in the building, so.
We
Okay.
can't hear
So
him
we'll-
talking out there. so
Yeah,
it's just
if
not-
we're gonna be talking with him, he needs to be up.
Yeah, and it's really not necessary because,
No, what I said is, I can, basically, I don't have the room, I don't have the manpower. I used to have a shop here in Marietta for, like I say, for 4 years. I don't want the headache to work for the public in having the shop.
All right, thank you.
just for clarification, by outside work, he wasn't talking about for outside customers. He was talking about physically doing work outside the building, repairing cars in the parking lot. So all repair work to be done inside the building. We'll add that as an additional stipulation.
Thank you.
I don't think you could do outside anyway in our.
You
city.
can, but we'll just make it clear.
We'll make Andy happy since it's his last day, yeah. All right, we have a motion and a second. Call the question. And that's approved 5-0. John, where in the world are we?
Moving on to Z20. And Mr. Estrada, just come back in 2 weeks for the Board of Commissioners hearing. Okay. Okay, rezoning case Z20 of 2020, Core 5 Industrial Partners LLC request a rezoning from MHP to LI for the purpose of an office warehouse in land lots 377 and 421 of the 18th District. The subject property is located on the southwest side of Oak Ridge Commerce Way, north of Oak Ridge Road. The applicant is present. Is there anyone here opposed to rezoning case Z20? Let the record show there's one person opposed. All those wishing to address the board, please come forward to be sworn in.
Kevin, we're ready when you are.
Great. Thank you, Commissioners. Again, I'm Kevin Moore here on behalf of the applicant Core 5 in this application for rezoning. And happily, we are not requesting a rezoning to RSL today. This is
We're so glad.
Yes. I want to talk about something different. In this application, this is just over 26 acres. It's 26 and a half acre site. You can see on your aerial, and I think this is important. I'm going to do a couple of things with this aerial so that you can see on your screens, and also for those who are watching, to explain how this fits in and where this application and proposed light industrial development is really located. As you can see on the aerial, you see the property outlined, the 25 and a half acres outlined. You see also that designation MHP. This property is zoned mobile home park. This is the undeveloped portion of the Green Acre Mobile Home Park, and you see that where he's pointing to now, that's a mobile home park zoned and has been built for many, many, many years. That's just along our northern boundary of this property. This was property that was also zoned as part of that and included as part of that mobile home park, just had not been developed yet. So this is a proposal to take 25 and a half acres of currently zoned mobile home park property and seek rezoning for a light industrial development. So certainly from an economic or a tax-based standpoint and our services standpoint, the difference is exponential between what you can build here today without zoning versus what we were proposing with the light industrial development, which you'll also notice with this property along the right-hand side of your screen. So along that eastern boundary is light industrial all the way down. That's all that gray area and the buildings that you see. That's currently, bless you, light industrial development. That is called Oak Ridge Commerce Way. Which is light industrial from Oak Ridge Commerce Way all the way down to its intersection with Oak Ridge Drive. And you'll see that our property, when we get turned to the site plan in a minute, our property accesses solely Oak Ridge Commerce Way, so it will simply become another component piece of this overall industrial area. And it will access only Oak Ridge Commerce Way, feeding south to Oak Ridge and then over to Thornton Road. So that is the area we're speaking of here. And what you see on the southerly portion of our property, those are the car lots that are on Thornton Road. just past this intersection with Oak Ridge. And so when you kind of even go back further from your aerial to see this overall area, and this is important because we received a lot of phone calls from people not understanding necessarily what we were proposing. That you see the mobile home park and you see the residential to the north, all of that feeds up to what's called Caudell Road along the north side, as well as I think it's Caudell and South Gordon Road. All of that area is residential and is accessed off of South Gordon Road. We don't access South Gordon Road. We're not impacting South Gordon Road with our light industrial development. It's completely oriented toward the existing light industrial and to the south, not to the north. And you can see we're well away from any existing residential. And so a lot of explaining had to do because it was where this was located. So with that, we're going to turn now to the site plan itself.
You can see here that Core 5, which is an outstanding industrial developer, is proposing a just over 300,000 square foot warehouse distribution facility. That's office, warehouse, and distribution for light industrial. This is that Oak Ridge Commerce Way that I was just discussing. You can see that there's a portion of this property right here that's already zoned light industrial that accesses directly to Oak Ridge Commerce Way that will be a part of this project. The rest of the property is zoned mobile home park, proposed for light industrial. The, at least as has proposed for the site plan, you do have the, what's commonly called the truck park, is located on the south side of the building, so even further away from the residential existing mobile home park, which is located here. We have provided for the, at a minimum, the 50-foot landscape buffer along this northern side and adjacent to any type of residential, which is hundreds of feet away from this proposed warehouse distribution facility.
One of the other comments or concerns that had been raised with us was the intersection of Oak Ridge Commerce Way and Oak Ridge. That intersection, if we want to go back to the aerial, it might even be happy the GIS map if we could, just because I think it's important for us to note, and we've done this, and I want to discuss it so that we can address that concern that had been highlighted to us. At that intersection, there had been some comment that about traffic congestion and so forth. It's a little bit southerly of this. You can either go large, kind of, there you go. Then you see at the bottom where there's GC and LI, and you see all the light industrial coming down to Oak Ridge there. That's just on the bottom of your screen. To the left is Thornton Road, which is, if you know where this is, Thornton Road and I-20 interchange are right there. But there was an issue that had been brought to our attention about the intersection of Oak Ridge Commerce Way and Oak Ridge Road, and some traffic congestion about our potential impact on that. As you can see, that's entirely an industrial area that feeds to that intersection. So what we did, while not required by DOT, but what we did is took it upon ourselves to have Croy Engineering perform a traffic study of that intersection, not only the traffic study of that intersection, but personal observation of what was going on at certain times of the day that we had heard about. What happens is there is actually there's a daycare located on that, at the intersection of Oak Ridge and Oak Ridge Commerce Way that causes some congestion, and specifically in the morning with cars being parked, parents parking their car out on the street and walking kids in at that location. In addition, there is some traffic backup that occurs along Oak Ridge Road in the afternoon at that intersection. So one of the things we did is we did have Croy perform this traffic study. We will be providing that information to Cobb DOT. But one of its real recommendations was that there needs to be striping done at this intersection on Oak Ridge Commerce Way to help orient drivers coming in and out, that there's actually 3 lanes there. There's a turn lane, dedicated turn lane to come out, as well as come out right hand, and then a right hand turn lane, as well as coming out to turn left, and so that there's and turn in, so that if you had that striping, it would help the traffic flow because people would be in the appropriate lanes as opposed to thinking that that's not there. Core 5 is agreeable to to installing the appropriate striping, subject to, obviously to DOT approval and coordination, but we are agreeable to do that since it was raised in our traffic study, and we'll be providing that. And I just want to go ahead and submit the traffic study in full to the clerk, and certainly one will be provided to Cobb DOT as well. But also importantly with that study is it documents that the projected traffic from our single industrial development here on this road does not overall have a negative impact on the level of service for this intersection or for this street, as you might imagine. It's consistent from a LI standpoint, from a light industrial standpoint. The use is consistent with this area. It's consistent with the existing light industrial uses. Your land use map certainly recognizes that. This property is designated as industrial compatible, but also, if you notice, it's also designated for the high-density residential associated with mobile home park, which we all agree. The county is much better served with this proposed development than how it is currently zoned. We think that the staff's recommendation is consistent with your future land use plan, consistent with what the county would see as a positive development for this piece of property as opposed to how it's currently zoned. And I think that's very clearly why staff has recommended approval. We appreciate those staff comments and recommendations for approval, and respectfully request you as a planning commission follow that recommendation and request that this application be approved, recommended for approval to the Board of Commissioners. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. We'll hear from the opposition this time.
Good morning. My name is Cindy Clayton, and I represent a company called Buster's Investments. I am their CFO. We are a property owner on Oak Ridge Commerce Way. We actually own 4 buildings on the street, as well as a piece of property that is not developed. Our 4 buildings range in size from 6,700 square feet to about 12,250. The proposed building that would go in is slated to be a 300,000 square foot building. I spoke to a fellow business owner yesterday who had a good bit of involvement in developing this office park, and he told me that it was not a stretch that the average business size in the park is approximately 12,000 feet, which is consistent with our average for the 4 buildings that we own personally. I think to put in a building of this size into an established park that has businesses much, much smaller, that it's potentially a stretch to say that the traffic is not going to be an impediment, especially when it's designed to be a warehousing facility. Our concern stems from the increase in the volume that would be caused by a facility of this nature. And as Mr. Moore explained, there is a daycare at the end of the street. It creates a good bit of congestion, especially at drop-off and pickup times during the day. Parents often park on the street to load their kids, and that congestion adds to the backup that happens between Oak Ridge Commerce Way and Oak Ridge Road. As I'm sure you're all aware, the county lines come together right there, so you don't drive but a couple hundred yards and you're in the next county, which adds to the complication of how Oak Ridge Commerce Road goes out into Thornton Road and then subsequently heads towards I-20. There is hardly any time of day that congestion doesn't exist on Thornton Road there at the intersection of Oak Ridge Commerce Road. So I think to put a facility into this place of that magnitude for a well-established business park, it is really going to add a level to the traffic congestion that I think needs to be considered. I don't think our concern is the change specifically from the mobile home park zoning to the light industrial. I mean, I can see how light industrial would really be a good improvement for the community. It's the size of the facility, the amount of trucks it's going to add, how it feels so different from the existing businesses that are there, and what it's going to do to traffic congestion for the business owners that are already there. just to speak for our business, we chose this park because it sort of fit into our business principles. And it kind of got into a sweet spot for some of the tenants that we work with. And I think that for businesses of that size, everybody would pretty much agree that a facility of this size would be a real change. And I'm not sure that it would be a change for the better as far as the volume on the road goes. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Cindy. Hearing and seeing no further opposition, back to this board and Galt will lead us.
Thank you, Judy. Just a couple observations. One, Kevin just sent me this about 5 o'clock yesterday, which was a traffic study done by Croy Engineering. So I know none of you have seen it probably. And I'm not sure. Yeah, I didn't print all the appendix to it all and that, so it was, and I guess they call it a supplemental operation analysis. And they studied that intersection because there was concern brought by a number of property owners on Oak Ridge Commerce Way about the increase in traffic and that. You know, the morning observation, you know, one of the big things that was noted is that when you come up to Oak Ridge Commerce Way, when you're on that turning onto Oak Ridge Road, it's about 36 wide of pavement, so it's 3 lanes wide. So people form a lane turning right out of it and a lane turning left. It's not really striped that way. But the problem is that parents appear to be parking on Oak Ridge Commerce Way to drop off kids to the daycare instead of pulling in the parking lot and doing that. They're parking on the street, which then blocks traffic entering that whole road because they're blocking a lane of traffic. Then you have people turning left and right. So I think that's something that DOT will need to take a look at. And I know Amy hasn't had a chance to review this yet, but the observations were striping and I think potentially doing something with the people parking on the street there for drop off, which isn't normally allowed for a daycare to have people parking on the street to drop off. So that was some of the recommendations, but what they found in the morning is that was, I believe, the biggest issue, but there were no long queues of people trying to leave Oak Ridge Commerce Way in the morning. So that wasn't really a problem. Now, afternoon, the road backs up all the way from Thornton Road past Oak Ridge Commerce Way. Oak Ridge Road does, it backs up. It's 1,550 feet, which is about a third of a mile back to Oak Ridge Commerce Way, but it backs up further than that, probably at least a half a mile plus every evening rush hour. So that creates some challenges with traffic getting in and out of here, especially if you were gonna have semis trying to turn left out. That would be an issue. The other issue with traffic that's not mentioned at all in here is that Oak Ridge turns into Riverside Parkway. And Riverside Parkway, we have a lot of apartment communities that have a lot of pedestrian traffic. And just this year alone, we've had 2 fatal crashes and a truck rollover on Riverside Parkway. So, you know, it's you know, something that there's danger going that way. And so while this doesn't say it, you know, I think it would be wise to restrict the truck movements to coming out on Oak Ridge and going west and coming from the west, which is, you know, going to State Highway instead of going down residential road, essentially. Not technically residential, it's a collector, but primarily residential uses if you go the other way. Yeah, but it did have, as far as level of service, if they didn't build this warehouse, the traffic study found that the AM peak would be a C rating and the PM peak a B rating, the intersection, and with the build, it goes to a C and a C. in here. And it's basically the difference that took it from a B to a C on the PM peak was they have an average of 14.1 seconds, and they say it will go to 15.1 second delay. I'm waiting to turn out onto Oak Ridge. I don't think it distinguishes which way.
That's with the traffic.
Yeah, right. And because you can usually get gaps in there, just the hard part is to see the gap. See what's coming because there's, a flow of vehicles there. But it does say afternoon peak hour, the number of vehicles queued to turn onto Oak Ridge Road will be approximately 2 vehicles or less 95% of the time, even with the builds. So it's the impact analysis doesn't show that we're gonna severely, change traffic on this road at all. Obviously, there'll be more traffic. I'm not trying to say that, but it's not gonna deteriorate that intersection any. I wish, people would do something with the intersection at the corner of Thornton and Oak Ridge needs improvement to move traffic better. That's really why it backs up, is traffic doesn't get through the light when it occurs because there aren't enough lanes there to move the traffic. But that's in Douglas County, so there's not much Cobb County can do about that. And we really can't do anything to improve Oak Ridge Road if you go back to the same bottleneck that's in Douglas. Although I will say if we go back, if you look just south of this site, there's an LI property that we just zoned last year or the year before, which is an expansion of the CarMax. And maybe, Kevin, there might be potential to, as a second access point, to connect into this road that goes directly to Thornton Road. Just something for you guys to look at. I don't know, that there may not be, but there may be, as a second access point that would make life a whole lot easier for a lot of people. And that. With that, I think, as Kevin pointed out, we had concern about traffic, and we were hearing from residential people up off of the Cardell South Gordon Road area, but this isn't going to access it at all. They're not going through the trailer park to get out. It will have zero impact up there, so I don't think that's really a concern. We heard about safety for the kids in the mobile home park mixing into the industrial, and with that, I'm going to ask that they put a fence all the way along the common border between their property and the mobile home park to keep kids from coming in. I think and it will have a 50-foot buffer as well. So it's gonna both help, keep the sound down as well as visually. They won't be really looking at a big building. So those were kind of the concerns that we heard. Does anybody have any comments before I make a motion?
Mhm.
Go ahead. Your mic didn't come on.
She
Probably voted.
Kevin, what are the hours of operation anticipated for this warehouse?
I don't know if there's any. Yeah, at this point, we don't have an anticipated hours of operation. We can't limit it to a certain time frame, but we don't have so we don't have a selected tenant right now. Those tenants don't sign until we have very interested, but they don't sign up until you have an entitled site. So it could vary. But it's like the other industrial uses that are warehouse and other types of industrial uses along Oak Ridge Commerce Way. They don't have hours of operation limitations either.
Any other questions? Okay, thanks, Kevin.
Okay. With that, I'll make a motion that we recommend approval of Z20, subject to all Staff comments and recommendations not otherwise in conflict. The site plan received January 23rd, 2020. All stipulations in the letter from Kevin Moore dated February 26th, 2020, not otherwise in conflict. A black vinyl coated chain link fence at least 6 feet in height to be installed along the common border with the mobile home park to the north of the site. All truck traffic to use Oak Ridge Road to the west of Oak Ridge Commerce Way only. Add that the district commissioner can approve additional access locations, in case they can work that out that we talked about. The applicant to provide improvements recommended for Oak Ridge Commerce Way in the supplemental operation analysis prepared by Croy Engineering dated March 2, 2020 with coordination and approval of Cobb DOT. And that's the motion.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, call the question. And that's approved 5-0.
Okay. Rezoning case Z1, Knoll Construction LLC, request rezoning from R20 to NRC for the purpose of an office retail building in land lot 789 of the 19th district. The property is located at the northwest corner of Ernest Bear Parkway, Prime Springs Road, and on the east side of Crane Drive. Earlier, there are 2 people here opposed. The applicant is present. All those wishing to address the board, please come forward and be sworn in.
Yes, ma'am, we're ready.
I was going to say good morning. I think we might be just about at good afternoon. Michelle Battle with Battle Law here representing the applicant, 1 Westport Square, Decatur, Georgia. This particular piece of property, I think, is more than suited for the proposed rezoning and is currently zoned R20. It is in the Community Activity Center land use designation, and it's at the intersection of Ernest Barrett Parkway and Powder Springs. And if you're familiar, which I'm sure you are, with this intersection, you'll know that there's a U-Haul and a package store that's located on the northwest corner. There's also a, and this is, that's almost directly in front of where the racetrack and the Walmart are located. Additionally, there's a new Lidl that's off to the south east corner, as you shown there. There's a undeveloped parcel that's zoned GC in front of that. There's a Bank of America and a Waffle House and a shopping center on the, I guess that's the southwest corner, that's also zoned GC. Adjacent to this property are other parcels that are also located within the Community Activity Center, but are zoned R20. But directly across from this property is property that is zoned NRC. The applicant would like to rezone this property as well to NRC to allow for the development of a 7,000 square foot medical office building with some accessory type retail that would be related to the medical type uses that would be on the property. The challenge that has come in with the opposition comes from the access point being from Crane Drive. If you're familiar with this intersection, you will know that it is a very busy intersection. And because of the amount of frontage that we have on both Barrett Parkway and Powder Springs, we cannot get access from either of those two intersections. So as a result, we have no choice but to have access from Crane Drive. We have spoken with the Transportation Department. We have been told that access from Crane Drive is permissible, even though it does go in towards the subdivision behind it that has some residential homes. I can tell you that there's a corporation that actually owns several of the parcels in that area and that off of Crane Drive, excuse me, and that I think the belief is that at some point that street will be redeveloped. Meanwhile, my client would like to have this facility there. We understand the traffic challenges. Their hours will anticipate being roughly 9 to 6 for the medical facility. With regards to the other retail uses, they may stay open slightly later. But what we know is that at various points in time during the course of the day, there are going to be challenges being able to access, particularly if you're trying to take a left turn in. Our assumption is that people will adjust themselves accordingly, but that is the only point of access that we can have for this particular project. And we believe, again, that the rezoning of this corner is appropriate. We do have the site plan. Show here, kind of the entrance point again is off of Crane Drive. We've been asked to make some improvements to this component of Crane Drive in order to improve the paving and like. We'll also have sidewalk that will be located here. When we turn into the facility, we have roughly 29 parking spaces, 2 of which are handicap, and then we've got the 7,000 square foot building here. We are abiding by all the buffers and landscape requirements that are shown. So with that, we would respectfully request a recommendation of approval based on the staff's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. We'll hear from the opposition at this time.
Good morning or afternoon. I'm Daniel McCampbell. I own 3465 Crane Drive, and my son is here also. He owns the house next door. This property is in a CAC, which is for future zoning, and it's not been developed. As you know me, Judy, I've been for years trying to do something, but traffic from when they built the Barrett Parkway, or West Cobb Loop, it was called then, it was so close to the intersection that we couldn't do anything with it. So what we've done is assemble 152 acres there, and we're working with Commissioner Cupid on redeveloping that whole area, which at that time we will, if you have the map of that showing the whole of Crane Drive? Yeah. Crane Drive was never, if you can get closer, Crane Drive was built, you can see how it goes all the way down. It was never finished, but our meetings with DOT was to move Crane Drive easterly and bring it down and intersect with our intersection. It's a full-blown intersection at Barrett Parkway, and do a right-in, right-out only on Crane Drive, which at that time would make it safer, because right now, there's been so many people killed out there, and you go see their bodies laying at the end of the street because it's dangerous. And the people that live there, they have a hard time. You just can't make a left turn. You take, maybe at 6 o'clock in the morning, if you're lucky. But right now, we're not against their building an office there at all, but there's properties around there that are already zoned, that have safe access and ingress and egress. And we would recommend that they find a better spot for the time being, because right now, that's not a good spot. And additionally, it's my understanding through zoning and land use that you can't build a commercial property off of a residential street. And currently that is a residential street. My son takes care of his disabled brother who lives there, and the lady next door, she just passed away, and her daughter is living there, and she's disabled also. So it's used by residents, and we wish that it would develop, but not until a lot of things fall in is that going to happen. In the meantime, they're going to have a lot of problems with people getting in and out. And I used to be a Cobb County fireman too, and I don't want to see anybody get hurt. And I know that that's going to happen because, as I say, Mr. Bozart that lived there and passed away, he had 3 wrecks getting out of there. So it's not safe. It's too close to the intersection. There's 65,000 cars a day at that intersection. And I'm sure that's why they'd like to put an office there, because of the visibility. But it's currently also a hole. It's very low there. They're going to have to fill it. And I didn't see that they were showing any slopes or anything. Well, I think they did show their detention pond. But if they have to slope, they're going to have to go on the Prasad property, which is next to them. And he doesn't have any access either, or he would have developed it already, or we would ours too. The property next to it that's NRC was zoned years ago for Decatur Federal Savings, and they had access directly onto Powder Springs Road at that time. And you may remember that.
Oh,
Yeah,
I
it was a
do.
long time ago, but anyway, Decatur Federal was going there, and we had access onto Powder Springs Road. That was
We've known each other for a long time.
a long
In case
time.
y'all haven't guessed.
Over probably 30 years.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and we were both young.
Yeah, exactly.
But at any rate, they can't, I represent the people that own the NRC property, and we can't do anything with it because you can't access that. And the reason it was zoned is because it was put with the property next door. It's been rezoned, Jebco Enterprises, and they pulled out of the deal, but they were going to access off of that piece east of that. And they don't have the problem of being so close to the intersection that they can get in and out. But she referred to Lidl. Those people wish that they didn't have to go out there. They get more complaints because it's to turn left, turn right's not bad, but turn left is dangerous. And again, I'll let my son tell you his experiences there. He lives there, gets in and out of there daily, and has a lot of trouble. So I'll let him speak to you.
Okay.
And it was nice seeing you again.
Nice seeing you too.
Hello, my name is Stephen McCampbell. I live at 3461 Crane Drive. I do live there, and on a good day, I'm lucky if I can come out and turn right in that right-hand turn lane. Currently, Crane Drive has full access to Powder Springs Road. There's really nothing you can do about it, but that's at your own risk. You gotta go across a right-hand turn lane, 2 straight lanes, and 2 left lanes to take a left. And that wouldn't be quite so bad, but you got people turning left from Barrett onto Powder Springs continuously, right from east-west onto Powder Springs, and people flying from Powder Springs toward Marietta. And then coming in, you got people, like if you were coming from Powder Springs to take a left into Crane, you got people slowing down or flying by. You can't do it. Every time you got to turn into there left, I have to go down to the auto zone and do a U-turn, and that's if it's before like 2. Anything past that, the traffic starts building all the way up to Bankstone, which is past Horseshoe Bend, about 2-3 miles down the road. It's bumper to bumper every day. Hurt Road, Whitehaven, all that. I have to go down, turn left into Whitehaven, go up to Lord and Lady, do a U-turn, come back, wait for the traffic to get back, and then sit in traffic to go back to Crane Drive to turn right into my subdivision. Now, leaving is a whole nother experience. If I'm lucky, I can turn a right in that right-hand turn lane. I can't turn, and go straight. If I'm lucky, like 1 out of every 5 times I come up there, I might be able to take a right on the Powder Springs Road. Elsewise, I have to turn right onto the right-hand turn lane, go to Barrett, turn right, go down in front of Walmart, do a U-turn, come back up, and that light there, when you turn left onto Powder Springs, it only lets 3 cars at a time go through. And if someone's looking down at their phone, ain't nobody going through. And if a 4th car makes it through, they're blowing that light. I promise you. And I've addressed that with Lisa about 10 times about that light. They need to change the timing on that light. In addition to that, the the trucks from the tank farm come in, and when they're turning left onto Powder Springs, there's not enough radius for that turn. The back of their trucks are coming into the left-hand lane as well. There needs to be an improvement, and if you look at their site plan, it shows they're right up on that line. So in the future, if DOT ever does any improvement there, which we're trying to keep it being like where that Family Dollar is right there, Anderson Farm in Powder Springs, where apparently they probably did their setback from the old, from the old roadbed before they moved it. And then it brought it up. So that begs the question, was that a county issue that caused them from not being able to sell their property? Or was that an issue that they had financially? Because that was certainly impacted one way or another. I mean, that thing's awfully close. And honestly, they were supposed to do some stuff. That's a whole nother issue. But they were supposed to, Magellan was supposed to do an improvement at Anderson Farm, because right now, people turning right, those trucks turning right on Anderson Farm, they're in the straight lane from Powder Springs Road and still can't turn right onto Anderson Farm. They're not in the turn lane. It's physically impossible for them to be in the right-hand turn lane and take a right without going through the other lanes. It's impossible, physically. Every single truck just sits there, which is one of the reasons why I brought up, well, I think Prestwick's wanting to do 155 senior apartments there. That would be a solution for access for Magellan trucks to stop clogging up Anderson Farm. But it's another use completely, but that's just something completely separate. But this over here, if y'all do road improvement there in the future, it could impact them. And why would you give them, let them go there if it could be impacted in the future? We won't know until we get DOT involved. Someone from DOT needs to be here and explain how they're going to solve that solution. But obviously the only solution to open up that corner, and it's been this way since I've been a kid, is to bring access to Crane at Barrett, where you have an existing left-hand turn lane that the homeowner at 6652 Ernest Barrett Parkway paid when DOT came through to have that left turn lane to go into that area. And you can safely go in at the red light where Walmart is and have Crane Drive. And finally, after 20-something years of sitting there wondering why this corner hasn't been developed, because it is a prime corner, and scratch your head as to why it hadn't been done. That's the answer. That's the reason. And I'm sure that would help tax dollars and help money for schools and stuff like that around here that you guys are looking to get, whereas the RSLs might not be.
Thank you, Stephen.
applying toward it.
Your time is, you want to wrap it up really quick?
Yeah, it's extremely dangerous. And if you guys do let them go there, there's got to be some sort of solution. And there's a reason that nothing's been done there through all these years, and it's access. And the fact that the way he talked about Lidl, the way it kind of snakes back and comes back around, those people turning left, I have to hit those people when I'm trying to do my U-turn in the auto zone to go around, do my U-turn. I have to deal with those people coming out of Lidl. So sometimes that's a conflict of interest too with that. So I'll just leave you guys with that.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you for your time.
It's public hearing portion is over. It's back to this board.
Madam Chairman, we went about a minute over, and we need to allow the applicant at least a minute. if
Do
they
you want
to.
an extra minute? No. Thank you. So it's back to this board.
Okay, thank you, Judy. I think we'll start by having Amy Diaz come up. Since what we heard about was traffic.
Just one with all the answers.
Amy Diaz, DOT.
Okay, and I know you've had a lot of discussions about this property. We've talked about it. I know you've talked with the applicant's attorney. And it's a tough one, obviously, because, there is no good way to provide access on either Powder Springs or Barrett Parkway for this particular parcel. Correct. Which leaves them to Crane Drive, essentially, is what you're coming to. But that doesn't, they're not violating any rules of Cobb DOT or Cobb County by accessing Crane Drive with this commercial development, correct?
No, so I checked into that because I was told by the applicant about that objection. And there are some best practices about commercial development that we don't want to send a lot of commercial development traffic through residential areas. But there is no restriction from development attaching to local road, and local roads are in our system are not designated between residential and commercial. This particular location is going to access near the corner, so it's not going to go past, any of the commercial traffic is not going to go past the residential portion. It would be something that we would allow.
Okay. I'm trying to think, and you don't know of any plans at this time to reroute Crane Drive to make an access point on Ernest Barrett?
No, I checked into that as well, and there are no current plans to act to improve either the main signalized intersection or Crane Drive's alignment. So there is a project on Anderson Mill that the one of the oppositions mentioned that we do have that project under design and it's going to be
good.
happening.
It needs it. I drive that road all the time, so I know exactly what he's talking about with the trucks, but that doesn't really impact this site directly.
We reached out to the traffic signals department to talk about access here, looking at Barrett Parkway and Powder Springs, and their preference is for Crane Drive, given the location of this parcel. And I do want to bring up that we have a Board of Commissioners agenda item to limit access on Barrett Parkway / East-West Connector. So that would be one thing that would be against Crane ever punching through, is that anytime we do an access point, it has to go through the board. It's a big deal because that was designed as a limited access roadway.
Right. I'm glad you brought that up, because that's something that we kind of enjoy on that road is you can, once you're on it, you can kind of move on it. You're not stuck in a lot of traffic with things coming in and out. Anybody else have any more questions for Amy? Go ahead, Fred. Oh, okay. Okay, thank you, Amy. I'll say, before we get to some more questions, I will say in general, the Georgia Constitution assumes that people have a right to develop their property. I don't think the applicant particularly likes the access. They wish it was better access, but I guess they're making the decision that for the visibility of this, they're willing to take that trade-off of trying to get in and out. I sure wouldn't want to be getting in and out of here, but on the other hand, it's not reasonable. Well, it's not reasonable to deny them the ability to develop. They're not going to build a house at the corner of Powder Springs and Ernest Barrett. I mean, that's pretty clear. Nobody's going to build a nice big house sitting at that intersection. With all the commercial and designated as a community activity center, which is a pretty intense commercial, designation. It's hard. NRC's within that category, NRC is one of the least intense categories that we normally consider or see within there. You're usually looking at the CRC, which is far more intense, or there's a lot of general commercial things like that. Before I go on anymore, Fred had something that you wanted to ask.
If I could get the objectors up, Mr. McCampbell or Mr. McCampbell, either one.
Dan?
Either one of you.
Dan or Steve? Come up. He wants one of you to come up to the,
He's going to grill you.
yeah. He's going to give you third degree.
It'd be the first time for that, but yeah. Hey, what I'm trying to find out, I think you talked about 152-acre assemblage. that you
Yes.
put together. Can you define that area for us based on what's here?
We're real estate brokers. I'm also a certified appraiser. in addition to being homeowners over there. So we want to see it assembled just like anybody else and built out over there, just like the county would like to see it.
But we got a
Just want it
map in
done
front of us.
safely.
Can you tell us where this assemblage is right now?
It starts at the corner of that property, going all the way down Barrett Parkway, everything buildable for about a mile on both sides of the road.
So when you say,
Includes
when you say
6650
going down Barrett Parkway, you're referring to the
Toward
R-
Macklin, north toward Macklin. Everything between Macklin and Barrett and Powder Springs is buildable on both sides of the road, basically.
Okay, what about the NRC piece that's shown here? Do you have that as well, or
Yes,
not?
that's that's Dodge McFall's property, and we have that listed as well.
All
We
right.
would have sold it already, but has no access, so it's hard to get people in and out of there without access. I mean, we got the same problem with our property as she's having. It's just, you know,
Well, when you say it has no access, it shows access on Crane currently, at least from a,
Well,
from an overhead viewpoint. if
until
not-
today, I didn't think it was even possible unless you were like through a PERD or a plan unit development, something like that, that you could even access commercial from a residential street. To me, that's all brand new news. That's why we asked. It seems like y'all are bending the rules a little bit. It can happen, but it has to be planned. Otherwise, I don't know. I'm a certified appraiser. It's just what I've read. I'm not the world's foremost expert, but from what I understand, this is all brand new news to me, that you can access commercial off a residential street like that, unless it's a planned development. I didn't think you could.
Yeah,
So,
you can, and you've been able to do it for years, because we don't
yeah,
designate residential street versus a street. A street is a street.
Can you
yeah.
comment on the elevation of the, you see where the prominent tree is right at Powder Springs Road?
Yes, they're right there. They're
Yes.
probably about 4 feet above, 4 to 5 feet above Powder Springs Road right there on that property. The elevation's probably a few feet higher, right there. It comes down. There's enough dirt there to balance everything out, because you got high dirt on 2750 and 3465 and 3461 Crane. They've got a lot of high dirt over there. And like my father said, they were, at one point, they would love to put something with that car wash there, but we can't even get people to respond back. So that's one solution to access.
Yeah,
The other solution would be Crane Drive and Barrett, where there's a light signaled with an existing turn lane going into that undeveloped property already. It's not like they'd have to, and also, you see how it shows Crane coming all the way down, where it says R20 on there?
Right.
And it shows all the way down? It stops at 3457. It don't keep going. They never can, that's what my dad was trying to say. They never finished it all the way through like they said they were going to years ago. In addition to that, the other corner over there, they had to take them to court because they landlocked the corner on the opposite corner, right behind that little gas station that she was talking about earlier with the U-Haul and everything. They landlocked, DOT landlocked that little the trees over there on that corner right there. And they went to court, and they said that they were supposed to settle with them for like $159,000 and never settled with them. DOT never paid them, even though a judgment told them to. They never settled with them, which is another thing over here that we keep getting. We're not getting DOT-friendly stuff on this side of town for sure. To me, the solution would have been a long time ago to do something similar like they did in East Cobb County with Frank Gordy Parkway, where they used that at Sandy Plains and Shalford, and it helped relieve a lot of that traffic right there. It did a huge difference over there. I used to deliver pizzas at Domino's years ago, and it was a nightmare over there. When they made Frank Gordy Parkway, I was like, sweet, because I could just get anywhere with no, it opened it wide up. Yes, so what are they going to do about the intersection improvement at Barrett? They said they had no plans for it in the future. It's a 6-lane highway.
No plans that we know of. So,
Yeah.
Does
So
that answer the
nothing.
question? Fred?
Mostly, I mean, it's just kind of a shame we're here today facing this decision when it would have been preferable had somebody planned years ago and relocated Crane Drive further to the east of the intersection so it intersected Powder Springs Road further away.
I agree.
That would have been a much safer situation.
I agree. And in the future, if a developer were to come do that, they won't be able to move that. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, we can't have any.
He tried to get him to do
No,
it.
so we can't have any conversations from the audience.
Thank you, that's all I had.
All right,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
I appreciate it.
All right, it's back to this board. Doc.
Thanks, Judy. Well, this is one of those tough situations. What I really hope can happen at some point is that a large assembly does occur, and they can do inter-parcel access and maybe remove Crane Drive and come up with some access points that are better But at this point, we have to deal with what's in front of us. And what's in front of us is this parcel at the corner that's requesting rezoning to commercial category so that they can have a reasonable use of the property. And we really can't deny that. As much as I don't know who wants to build there or go there, I wouldn't put my business there with this access, but you know, it's, unfortunately, we just are kind of in a position where it's not reasonable to deny them, I don't believe. So with that, I'm gonna make a motion that we recommend approval of Z1, subject to all the following. All staff comments and recommendations not otherwise in conflict. All stipulations in the letter from Michelle Battle dated January 31st, 2020, not otherwise in conflict. No access to Ernest Barrett Parkway or Powder Springs Road. Revised DOT comments, including, and they asked me to read a couple things that they put in their DOT comments. Crane Drive is classified as a local roadway, and according to the available information, the existing right-of-way does meet minimum requirements for this classification. The existing surface, pavement surface on Crane Drive shows signs of weathering and cracking. And then and that was the comments section. Then under recommendations, I added a third recommendation. Recommend applicant have Crane Drive resurfaced from Powder Springs Road to the northwestern end of the development frontage after completion of the proposed development. The timing of this recommendation is made to limit construction vehicles damage to the new roadway surface. So basically repaving from the corner to their building. So you get a little bit better there. And then back to the stipulations. The district commissioner may approve minor modifications except for those that increase the overall building square footage, cause a reduction in the size of an approved buffer, change an access location to a different roadway, change that is in conflict with an express stipulation or condition of zoning, or requires a variance or violates Cobb County ordinance. So that's the motion.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second? Second by Alice. Call the question. Okay, thank you. Thank y'all.
We were just getting.
Y'all were just getting coordinated down there. That's approved 5-0. All right.
That completes your agenda, Madam Chair.
Oh, my goodness. So we have some other business items to take care of. So I need a motion on the minutes on the special call meetings. So do I have a motion?
Sure, yeah.
All right.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the minutes from the meetings on February 12th and February 24th as presented.
All right. Have a motion, have a second? Second?
Oh.
But you can still vote, even if we. All right, call the question. And that's approved 5-0. And is that it? Well, with that, that concludes our March hearing. Andy, we wish you the best.
Thank you.
And we will miss you.
I'll
And
miss you
that, with that, we're going to take you out.
I'm gonna come watch
We're
every,
going to take you out to eat. So